Hi, welcome to OTR Friendly Debate, a podcast where three lawyers debate things big and small while trying to remain friends. My name is Pat, I'm a patent attorney, and I'm here with my fellow attorney co-hosts, Lando and Mucci.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Here too. Hello.
So today we're talking about the 90s. Very exciting stuff. The debate is the Jurassic Park trilogy versus the Scream trilogy. So let's go ahead and meet our debaters. Lando, why don't you say a little something about yourself? What do you do for work, and how is that going to help you in today's debate?
So, my name's Lando. I'm a prosecutor. I am siding with Jurassic Park as the best 90s trilogy. Went into the 2000s, but it's firmly in the 90s. I think my experience as a prosecutor is really going to help me out here.
Mm-hmm. In any particular way, or just a general sense?
No, just very general.
All right. We love to have that unbridled confidence stepping into the stage today. So, Mucci, could you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. Hi. I work in the immigration field, but I have done some trial work in my past life as a PI attorney, so I think that is where my debate skills will pay off a little more.
We'll see.
Than in what I do now.
We'll see about that, Mucci.
So, all right. As always, the format is opening statements first, then a couple of my questions, a brief closing argument, and then I end with a verdict. I want a clean fight out there today, guys, so try and minimize the crosstalk. I realize that's very much do as I say and not as I do. But are you guys ready?
Well,
Yeah.
can I announce something to the court first?
Ooh.
Oh,
Because
He's got something.
we're going to have a couple guests on this episode, or at least one guest, from a fellow podcast, the No More Late Fees podcast. And they'll be kind of both of our expert witnesses in terms of, because they cover 90s and 2000s movies. So I think they'll be, provide some really good insights.
Very unusual for a trial in that usually both sides don't call the same witness to help
Right.
their cause. This is we'll see how this plays out, and hopefully they side with me.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll just consider them a friend of the court.
Right.
How about that?
Okay.
Amicus.
Like a clerk.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we got to figure out which one of you is doing your opening first. We don't have a coin on us, unfortunately, in the field. So does one of you want to volunteer?
I will volunteer, Mucci.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
With Jurassic Park celebrating its 30th anniversary of release yesterday, June 9th, I feel it's appropriate and fitting for me to argue on behalf of how epic and just awesome this movie was. Led to a trilogy, then the trilogy led to a whole nother trilogy starring Chris Pratt. If you like him, great. If you don't, that's fine too. The movie, as well as the following sequels, Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, they set precedents all over the place. In terms of storytelling, in terms of the music, in terms of the visual effects that were implemented in these movies. Specifically Jurassic Park, the first one, this is the trilogy that brought in the 90s and just dominated massively. So that's why I think Jurassic Park and its two sequels are the movies of the 90s.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks,
It's
Mucci.
cool.
Mucci, I'm glad you are thinking it's cool.
Thank you
Very
for thinking they are
cool. Now, Mucci, you can...
I think he just opened with that.
Cool. Well, speaking of cool, I think the character of Abed probably exists because of Scream. Because Scream introduced the whole idea, really, of this meta commentary on the genre that the characters are in. That really was not something that was done in, I can't think of really any movies, and it's kind of pretty prevalent now. You have your horror comedies that come after the fact, Cabin in the Woods, Shaun of the Dead, things like that. Mm-hmm. But also even, the character of Abed in Community is basically the character of Randy in Scream. Randy in Scream is dissecting the rules of horror movies and then horror movie sequels and horror movie trilogies, and very much commenting on the fact that these characters are like in a horror movie. And Abed in Community is commenting on how they're in a sitcom, and this is a bottle episode. And I don't think you get any of that without Scream coming along there first, and not only revitalizing the horror genre, but also revitalizing introducing to film and TV this concept of a meta narrative and commentary within the narrative about what's going on and the characters being in something like a movie.
So we're forced to believe that Scream is a good trilogy because it brought about community?
Not solely because of that.
Okay.
But because it brought about the entire... like I said. Yeah, I already said it. I know what you're doing here.
So you're
Don't bait
saying
me into rambling.
that the meta commentary of Screen is its key virtue, whereas I think you said the utter domination of the 90s and the epicness of the Jurassic Park trilogy is...
They're dinosaurs. They're big.
Yeah. Okay.
It's huge.
All right. Well,
Huge.
I really want to see where you guys go with this today, because I think there's a lot that we can dig into.
Yeah, for sure.
Lando, you went first with your opening. This first question's to you. What kind of impact did your trilogy have at the time of release?
Well, I guess... Shit, it sucks that you're the judge on this because one of the biggest things about the Jurassic Park trilogy is that it just amassed such a profit and gross revenue. It was a box office hit. So as of my
We're
research...
talking a multi-day rental if you were going to step into a Blockbuster.
Well, or if
That
you
ties
saw it
into
in...
our guest.
You could, if you could see it in theaters, you buy a ticket and watch it in theaters. This was a huge, blockbuster in that it's still listed in... in the top 50 highest grossing movies of all time. So it's sitting pretty at number 33. Okay? And I think that's a massive accomplishment considering there's only like 4 other movies that are older than 2010. The rest of the top 50 are 2010 and on. So the fact that this 1993 movie is sitting at number 33 of top grossing movie of all time, I think that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah, or indicative that they didn't pay Michael Crichton enough for his rights.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Does that factor into
The thing is, they bought the rights to that book, and that's why they came about with Jurassic Park, and same thing with The Lost World, which Michael Crichton also wrote. So he got what was coming to him, and that he accepted it.
Usually that's used as a negative. He got what was coming to him, but it's positive here.
It's
that,
also
prosecutor mindset coming out here.
he got what he deserved.
His money.
his well-earned money. It also was a movie in 1993. This trilogy essentially gave rise to a generation of people obsessed with dinosaurs, people that are wanting to get into the sciences.
Oh, every kid loved dinosaurs.
Exactly. And I think a big motivator for that was Jurassic Park and its sequels. So as far as influence, it influenced a generation. I don't think that Scream can say that. There are a lot of crimes in various cities around the world, but I don't think it had anything to do with Scream.
Impact.
Now, Mucci, did Scream in fact inspire a generation?
I don't think in the way that Orlando is insinuating that it inspired murderers, but
I just didn't want to assume the conclusion here.
I think I actually do believe there are some copycat murders that were inspired by Scream, but outside of that, in the general culture, getting at what I was talking about earlier with this this meta commentary on the kind of movie you're in, not only inspiring horror movies and horror comedies, but at the time horror movies were not really that great in the mid 90s. It wasn't at a good spot. The slasher movie craze was over and done with. Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street start to really breathe their last breaths in the beginning of the 90s and with really horrible installments. So people really didn't have any favorable opinion of slasher movies. And when Scream was about to come out, people thought it was going to be a bomb, but it turned out to be a really major... Yeah, well, I didn't think that, actually. But they thought it was going to be, nothing to write home about. But it was a sort of sleeper hit. It ended up being in theaters for 8 months. From the time it released in December of December of 1996, and so successful that it was, a sequel was rapidly produced about a year later. Scream 2 comes out December of 1997, and actually even has an even better critical reception surprisingly. But on Rotten Tomatoes, its score is higher, and Gene Siskel didn't like the first one and liked the second one for whatever reason. So I think critics maybe just came around at that point too. Any critics that were still I don't know about this slasher movie, saw its influence by that point. And then you have kind of copy cat slasher movies that come out after that are a little bit more self-aware, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and things like that. But then you also have later down the line, Get Out. Jordan Peele said Scream was a big inspiration on Get Out. You have Cabin in the Woods, which is very meta, very much commenting on the genre. You have the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer that is very meta, very commenting on this horror / sci-fi genre.
So Mucci, I'm going to stop you there before we get too far into legacy of these.
Sure.
Lando, we were kind of talking about what splasher movie made when it came out. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that? Just to wrap up that topic.
Yeah. So the CGI in the movie was just groundbreaking because at the time, CGI was coming about, and it was at a place where they hadn't really gotten it done seamlessly. They hadn't gotten to it. They hadn't gotten it to a place where it needed to be, where it was going to be believable. Jurassic Park got it to where you have creatures on a screen with humans, and it's seamless. You believe it, and it's not something where it's like referencing Community, the movie that they made with the little Gabba Gabba guy. So, which movies nowadays are still doing. I mean, 30 years later, people still can't get it right. Jurassic Park still holds true because they use CGI as well as practical effects in combination to just make an awesome movie where we have dinosaurs on screen with people. I think it was just a massive accomplishment for something that they did.
DOS effect, dinosaurs on screen.
Right.
Okay.
In 1993.
Right.
Yeah. So, Mucci, I kind of want to... Well, you covered it a little bit about the initial impact of the film. And maybe I'm summarizing here, but it seemed like it took a couple of years, like you said, or at least a little bit for the whole series to be appreciated.
Well, I think...
its appreciation grew, rather.
Appreciation grew, probably. Yeah, that would be accurate. And it was... the first one was a hit, as far as... You can't really compare an R-rated movie to, PG-13 movies in terms of really gross because, fewer people can see R-rated movies. But it was the highest grossing slasher movie until 2018 when that Halloween 2018 came out. So it was a big hit, and they were actually all big hits. We all know
how big of a hit that movie was.
It was. I mean, I didn't care for it, but it was a big hit. But yeah, if we're talking box office, obviously can't compare necessarily in numbers, but I can compare within the genre how big of a splash it made.
Just a few things to add. Just at the top, the cherry on top of this question for Jurassic Park, we've got Steven Spielberg, we've got John Williams, we've got Jeff Goldblum, we've got dinosaurs, we've got Mucci. Who's the
Santa?
We've got
Mucci.
Who's the Santa Claus? Richard Attenborough.
We've got Richard Attenborough, which I
Tim Allen?
know that you like Richard Attenborough. Based on a previous episode that we had, the best on-screen Santas. I know you like that guy. He was a key figure in Jurassic Park, so you really can't knock this movie.
To the North Pole.
Yeah, have you got Newman?
You do have Newman.
Newman's on there. I know you love Seinfeld. Pat, you love Seinfeld?
Oh, yeah. More than The Office, definitely. Also, you guys know, long-term listeners here will know I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Right. After he lost to me.
He's just come around on them.
So we've got big names over here. Mucci, tell me some big Scream names.
Right,
some real Scream queens and kings.
Well, aside, behind the camera, you have Wes Craven, who is a pretty legendary horror director. I mean, he created Nightmare on Elm Street, which was obviously a long-running slasher series, but he directed and created the first installment of that. Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, and a number of horror. I mean, he just was almost exclusively a horror director. And so if you're a horror fan, big major name there. Kevin Williamson was he wrote the screenplay, and he was very inspired by Halloween. You can tell in the movie where he's really commenting on... they watch Halloween in the movie, but he's commenting on slasher tropes that were popularized by such films as Halloween, Friday the 13th, things like that. You have Neve Campbell. and you have Shaggy from the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. And then in part 2, you got Sarah Michelle Gellar. So you got some big 90s stars. And, of course, Courtney Cox, David Arquette met, I think they met on the set of Scream and later, of course, got married and had their own relationship, kind of mirroring their characters' relationships in the series.
And then later
did
on...
they kill each other? Or?
Then what happened later on after
in
that?
Real life?
Yeah, in real life.
Well, I think in real life and in the movies they get divorced, so it also mirrors their real life. But that's later. That's after the part 3. So.
All right, guys. So I've kind of heard a lot about I think the start of these series, right? The initial splash, what it meant when they came out in 95, 96, whatever. But I want to talk about consistency. There's a reason instead of choosing just specific movies from the 90s that we chose trilogies. So, Lando, I want you to talk a little bit about how does the Jurassic Park series evolve, and is there a consistent quality and tone to these movies?
Yeah.
And a consistent gross profit? I don't know. Tell me.
Well, there's well, as far as consistency, those big names that I did mention, they were all in the first 2 movies. Michael Crichton writing the first 2 novels, Jurassic Park and then The Lost World. Crichton was writing the sequel to Jurassic Park, The Lost World. The theme throughout these movies is essentially don't fuck with dinosaurs, right? So man cannot control these huge and just beautiful creatures. You need to appreciate and respect them for what they are. Don't mess with them,
Well, wasn't it kind of messing with the dinosaurs to bring them back? You said appreciate them for what they are, but leaving them in amber is kind of just leaving them what they were.
To a certain extent.
Are you
once they're already here?
Yeah.
So because for the sequels, they're here.
Yeah, they did the whole King Kong thing.
Life found a way. And I think the theme that runs throughout these movies is like it's seen in the last scene of the third movie. The third movie, granted, not as popular as the first 2 because it lost all of those big names, lost John Williams, lost Steven Spielberg, lost all those people, and it ended up being a little bit of a, it did come out in 2000, I think it was 2001 that it came out. Yep. So it was a little bit further removed and didn't have the big names anymore. However, it did stay with this theme of these are majestic creatures that, since they are here now, leave them alone. And in the last scene of the third movie, you see the pterodactyls flying over the ocean, and life is finding a way off that island to terrorize some other people.
So in conclusion here, you're kind of saying the third movie didn't hold up?
I think it held up with the theme of the trilogy.
Okay.
And I think it was a good movie, despite not having all those big names, and it kept with the theme of Jurassic Park.
Okay. Now, Mucci, do you want to tell us a little bit about the sequels to Scream and how those evolved?
Yeah. So, speaking of consistency, Wes Craven, he doesn't tend to direct many of the sequels to his. The other point of comparison is Nightmare on Elm Street, which he directed the first one. Doesn't direct anything until New Nightmare, which is actually a very kind of a trial run for Scream. I don't know if you ever heard about that movie.
No.
But it's the 7th installment of Nightmare on Elm Street, and in that movie, they are the characters are playing versions of themselves making a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and the things happening in the script are actually happening in real life. It takes a more supernatural element to it than Scream does, but it has that sort of meta commentary and this kind of like breaking the fourth wall element that Scream employs pretty well. Now, but what I say that all just to say that Wes Craven does seem to like coming back to Scream and directing each of the movies. So you have that consistency throughout. What's that?
It's an exception to his typical MO.
Yes. I mean, it must be something that he really believed in, because even the fourth one, which comes out 11 years later, he directs that one. And then he passed away shortly, a few years after that. I think that was the last movie he ever directed. But I believe that he would have directed these 2 newest Scream movies as well. I think it just was a series he really believed in. And he had the same writer, Kevin Williamson, for the second one, not for the third one. But you also follow the same characters, anyone that survived the previous movie, which is not really typical of slasher movies. Usually it's a different set of like teenagers at a camp getting killed, and then you're on to the next one, But you kind of follow the saga of of Neve Campbell's character, Sydney, and her history and how that comes back to sort of influence the killers in each of the movies. And what I really like about Scream as well is that it's not Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, whoever, Michael Myers killing someone. You don't know who the killer is. That's what's cool about it, is that it's a whodunit mystery every time. So each of them have that element of mystery, and each of the movies continue these themes of providing commentary on not only slasher movies, but by the second one, you're talking about slasher movie sequels. All the kills are always bigger and more dramatic. By the third one, they're saying even main characters can die, even you, Sydney. It's kind of like commenting on the tropes of each film in now that lineage. All right, so I have an expert witness, fellow podcaster, Danielle from the No More Late Fees podcast.
Right, and this is a mutual witness, right?
Yes, we both have we'll both be asking questions.
By way of stipulation, we're just going to call this witness together.
Yes.
All
so
right.
Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself and your podcast?
Sure. My name is Danielle, and I am one of the hosts of the No More Late Fees podcast, which is a 90s 2000s movie podcast. Jackie, my co-host and best friend, we used to work at Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to take a fun journey in nostalgia. We cover movies from 1995 to 2005, and we examine how movies hold up, how we felt about them when we were younger, and we do a rating ranked on the movies at Blockbuster. So would buy it again would be the highest, and then we go to 5-day rental, 2-day rental, and same-day rental. And then after we kind of pick through the movie and talk about some fun facts and just things that stood out to us, and we kind of go frame for frame on that, then we give another rating of like how we feel now. And sometimes the ratings are vastly different from what we thought about when we were younger until how we feel now. So it's a fun journey.
Yeah,
And
I could
Jackie
imagine
and I
it'd be different.
Do the ratings ever improve over time, or is it generally like everything just has gotten worse?
No. Sometimes they improve, mainly because like there are themes in the movies that maybe we just didn't quite grasp when we were younger.
Yeah.
We just didn't get. We appreciate a little bit more. So yeah, it can change. But I think the funniest thing is that Jackie and I have been friends for 25 years, and we still are learning a whole bunch about each other during these episodes.
Right.
So can cause some side eye.
Yeah, I think I listened to a little bit of the I Know What You Did Last Summer episode, and I think you all the Y2K versions, you were like very pretty high on it because it's probably like around the slasher craze of the late 90s post Scream, and then at the end you all give it like ones, 1-day rentals, I think.
Yeah, it's not a good movie in my opinion.
Mostly
But
Jennifer Love Hewitt's performance.
Yeah.
It's vibes.
Got it.
It's nostalgia, I think, more than anything. And now it's actually a funny watch because you can just like hate watch it, I guess, and it's fun. So.
Got it. So yeah, we have Scream as a trilogy and Jurassic Park as a trilogy that we're debating. I'm on the side of Scream. Orlando's on the side of Jurassic Park. And first thing,
the examination of your expert witness.
yes. So my first question for our expert witness is, I think you touched on this a little bit. You said there's some like side eye sometimes when you're learning stuff about each other. But what's the biggest difference of opinion you have had with regard to a movie on the podcast, if you can remember?
Oh, there's so many. Like it's gotten to a point where there's a lot, and I think it just goes down to taste for Jackie and I, because I'm starting to realize maybe I'm way more into girl movies in some end, and like Jackie grew up watching Tremors all the time, like every freaking day.
Love Tremors.
But also she has like a deep love for Adam Sandler movies, and younger Danielle was right on board with her, but now older Danielle finds them to be very problematic. So
Oh yeah.
I would say our Billy Madison episode was pretty polarizing. And another one is, for me, I love The Parent Trap, and Jackie does not like it.
Oh, yeah. As far as difference of opinion, I think your co-host is more into horror, correct? And you make an exception for Scream, but generally you're not really into horror. Is that accurate? Or
Yeah, I'm a scaredy cat. But I think that's what makes the kind of slasher resurgence that happened in the late 90s so great and early 2000s, because I can watch them and not feel too scared. Like, I'm okay. I could watch it even at night. Like, I'm okay. But when we start getting into, like, Saw and the more goriness of things,
torture
I get really
stuff,
really scared. Yeah.
I
And
guess
The
that's why-
Exorcist, like the stuff from the 70s, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
I guess that's why the podcast Too Scary Didn't Watch sort of exists.
That's
if you
right.
still want to learn about the movie. But
That's a good one. All right, Lando, you have a question?
Yeah, so Danielle, between these two movie franchises, Scream and Jurassic Park, forget about them. What is one of your favorite 90s trilogies? If you have one.
Early 2000s.
Trilogy. I would.
If it's Jurassic
gotta
Park,
go with
I'll take
Lord.
that too. So
It's not, but I would go with Lord of the Rings for
okay,
sure.
yeah,
Hard to
I
beat.
know that it, like, obviously, yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
as
Trying
opposed
think,
to
like,
the
trilogies. It's so hard.
right, as opposed to the Hobbit movies that kind of tanked.
Yeah, I didn't watch those.
you didn't miss.
I
a
think I
single
watched the
thing.
first two. I heard the third one was terrible. But yeah, there's like that's a very, and I think it was unique for the time that was all kind of filmed in one, as essentially one long movie, and they just released like every year around Christmas, like, which I don't, neither of our trilogies can you say that about, because they're just like, oh, the first movie was successful. Oh, okay, how about another one? And then for Scream, it was like, how about another one
Right.
less than a year later?
Well, I believe that Kevin Williamson is like a huge John Carpenter fan, right? So
Mhm.
like, I think his motivation was always inspired by the Halloween series. So obviously Halloween kept going. He was like, bet, let's do it for Scream as well. So
Yeah. My last question then was, on your podcast, you start out, as you said, with your ratings of your Y2K selves and how they felt about whatever movie you're covering, and then at the end, you give your current selves, how you feel, now about each movie. Could you do that for these trilogies? How did you feel about them at the time, and how do you feel about them now?
yes, I definitely can. But I just remembered like some trilogies I forgot,
Okay.
which one of, like, I mean, obviously we have MCU fever now, but I really did enjoy, even if they were a little corny at times, but I did enjoy the Spider-Man trilogy
Yes.
in the early 2000s.
Tobey
Yes,
Maguire.
absolutely.
I very much like Blade at the time. I know when we do Blade Trinity on the show, it's going to be really hard because it does not hold up at all anymore.
Well, that'll be the one to listen
And-
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a huge X-Men fan, so
Oh.
as much as I hate Bryan Singer
Yeah.
and how much they ruined a lot of my favorite characters,
Same.
I still can appreciate the original 3 movies that came out. So
Right.
I just remembered, so I had to throw that out.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
I'm a big MCU guy. I love all those superhero movies. I know Pat, our judge for this episode, he's
I mean,
kind of
I'll go out with you guys and watch them, but it's not really doing a whole lot for me. Just taking one for the team.
Oh man. I love Marvel comic books so much, so
Yeah.
this is like a nerd's dream. I feel like I'm living in the best time in the world. I don't care how many of these movies they make. I don't care if they're not as great as maybe they should be. I will still eat it up. So I'm
Well, they-
very happy.
They really, I think, successfully captured, what it's like to read comics, where you're like, you read an issue and then, oh, this is continued in, Captain Marvel, and then this one's continued in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then, it gets you to buy three issues a month rather than one a month. But like I think they really captured that with like these stories that interweave between all these different movies. Like they, captured what it feels like to read a comic book in movie form. Yeah.
It kind of seems like a cash grab to me. But.
I mean, it is like let's keep it 100. When Disney decided to buy Star Wars and Marvel, the goal was, and if you'll see this after the Disney Renaissance, where they started to make a shift outside of just like Disney princess movies and started to like, we see like the Treasure Planets, we see Lilo and Stitch. It's just like a different narrative that started happening, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Disney wasn't making money from boys, or for merchandise.
Right.
And they just started getting really frustrated in the fact that they were producing content and it just wasn't kicking where they needed it to. So they said, you know what, forget it. We're just going to buy what we need, which is Star Wars. Obviously, they're making a shit ton of money, excuse me for cursing, but then Marvel, same thing. But the difference, I think, with Marvel is that, like, yes, it's a cash grab. I mean, we're in a capitalist system, of course. But Kevin Feige, the thing that I appreciate about him is that he is very passionate and very much a comic book lover, and he has taken these stories that he very much appreciates and tried to make them put it into fruition of what a comic book reader would want to see on the screen. It's not all hits, obviously, but he is an advocate for it, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said that it's not someone cynical behind the camera. There's an actual enthusiast at the helm, so I can see that.
Yeah. Sorry, don't let me go down that rabbit hole. I will
That's fine. That's fine.
For real.
So yeah, do you have an assessment of the movies at the time versus now?
So, I really remember seeing the first Jurassic Park. I was scared out of my mind. Like, I would say I was probably more scared seeing Jurassic Park, the first movie, than I was of the Scream movie. Like, legit terrified of the dinosaurs. Which I think is really funny because the dinosaurs were only in that movie for, like, I want to say maybe under 5 minutes. Isn't that crazy? Like, they're not even in it for that long. It's called Jurassic Park. It's supposed to be about the dinosaurs, and they're barely in it. But when they were, I was terrified. Scream was more psychological because, you're a teenager. How many times are you home by yourself? How many times do you get random calls? We didn't have caller ID quite yet. So I do remember just like being absolutely terrified with both of them. But I will say that when the sequels came, I did not go to the movies to go see Jurassic 2 or 3. I saw them maybe on VHS. I barely remember them. I love Jeff Goldblum, but he couldn't carry it for me at that point.
Ouch.
And Scream 2 and Scream 3, loved it, bought it on DVD, watched it over and over again, was like even a comfort movie at that point. It just was really good.
Yeah. And then now so I guess even at the time you like loved Jurassic Park 1, 2, and 3, you kind of forget about, and then loved Scream, or at least liked Scream 2 and 3 enough to watch them over and over. Trilogy as a whole, looking at each of them now, what do you think?
I still think, honestly, I feel like Jurassic Park should have just been a standalone movie and called it a day. But I also put Jurassic Park in that category of white people doing stupid shit. That's the whole premise of it. Just I look at The Mummy to say, oh, that's a great another. It's not a full good trilogy. I mean, like the first two.
Yeah. The Scorpion
but it's
King.
the same thing, like. But I think Scream stands a lot better as a franchise than Jurassic Park. Now that I can rewatch them, I still think that they're great. I'll have to rewatch at least I think the the second and third one for the podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
for Jurassic Park, I'm not looking forward to it.
Oh man,
Sorry.
Yeah.
that is devastating to hear.
I will say, though, I think the book for Jurassic Park is a little bit better than the movie. It gets into some more of the science of, like, the genetics of it, if that's kind of up your alley.
Yes.
And Michael Crichton's a fantastic author, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that's any substitute for what
Movie.
your actual work for the podcast, but it could be enjoyable. Well, thank you so much for that insight on both of these trilogies. Did either of you have anything else for our guest?
Well, I was just going to ask if you wanted to, again, promote any more about your podcast, anything coming up you want to highlight, or any episodes you think people should check out first, or anything like that. Go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
Okay, well, lots of fun. I'm sorry I didn't help certain people with the debate, but
You
thank
are
guys for
completely
having me
fine,
on.
Danielle. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
If you love 90s and 2000s movies, then you should definitely check us out. We're No More Late Fees. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and pretty much any other podcast platform. Our newest episode, or what's live right now that just came out, is The Long Kiss Goodnight. If you love Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson, then that's definitely an episode to check out. And hit us up on socials if you have questions. We do a lot of fun stuff over there. So, and I just thank you guys again for having me on.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
course,
Thank you so
awesome.
much.
All right, so it was great to hear from our expert witness, Danielle. Although, actually, I'm surprised for two seasoned attorneys like yourselves, you never actually qualified her as an expert witness. For our friends at home, basically you have to prove up what their credentials are as why they should be able to give an opinion that's essentially fact in the court. So again, I'll just consider her a friend of the pod, let's say in lieu
Amicus.
in lieu of an amicus brief. That's how I'm going to take her testimony today.
I saw, so when she first came on and we established, her podcast and what she talks about, I was of the mindset that would establish her credentials, but then I saw which way she was leaning. So I'll agree with you, and we can completely disqualify her as an expert witness. That's fine with me.
Well,
She
it's
has
too
got the
late. The
qualifications.
die has been cast.
All right.
So, anyway, like I said, I'll take it under advisement. But what I'd like you to do is get to your closings. Kind of
Okay.
give me, in a sentence or two, what the meat of your argument is.
You're looking at me, so I guess I'll
Oh, yeah.
start. Jurassic Park and its sequels, the trilogy that started in 1993, brought back the monster movies, the big monster movies that were kind of hard to do for 80s filmmakers that were dealing with these practical effects. Jurassic Park and its sequels brought about these practical effects and as well as CGI in a seamless way that they used camera tricks and filming techniques that hid the dinosaurs for the most part, and you could see, the portions that were relevant in, the scary parts, the face of the fucking T-Rex with its teeth coming out of the rain. Everything else behind it was blackened so that you see this huge monster coming at you.
Your time is up, counsel.
Okay.
Could you please wrap things up?
Jurassic Park and its sequels were amazing movies with dinosaurs. They dominate.
All right, thank you. And Mucci?
Yeah, Scream.
And then put your mic down afterwards. Thank you.
Scream provided this meta commentary on not just the horror genre, but its influence extends beyond that to TV shows and movies that we see now of any genre. And so I think its influence is much more broad and felt kind of seeped into the culture. And I just want to close with one way that Scream subverted expectations, as in addition to commenting on them, and that is casting Drew Barrymore in this movie. Everyone assumed she's going to be the final girl. She dies in the first 12 minutes. Audiences were shocked, and I don't think that they ever knew what to expect again from a horror movie.
All right, well, having heard your arguments and bearing in mind the testimony of our expert here, I think I'm actually able to render a verdict.
Okay.
And so I'll start by saying that I am personally a fan of Jurassic Park. I enjoyed, actually for a project for law school, for a genetics law class, reading Michael Crichton's book and doing some legal analysis on, what the issues are with the CRISPR gene editing that goes on. That being said, Jurassic Park's a good movie. But
Don't
we're
like
looking
where
at
this is
trilogies
going.
here, and for me, the appealing thing is that the way that Scream evolved the genre, because I kind of hate like horror slasher movies that like Friday the 13th, Halloween stuff does, and I cannot stress this enough, nothing for me. But Scream actually adding in some sophistication to the genre.
So it does something for you.
Oh, yeah, baby. It's doing something right now. You can cut that out. Well, anyways, what I'm trying to say here is that it brings something more to the table. It's the next evolution of it, and it keeps that going through the trilogy. So in my mind, the decision is clear. Scream is the superior 90s trilogy.
See, and I thought I was going to lose because I knew you hated slashers.
I wasn't sure.
You sold me. You sold me on what the difference is on why it shouldn't be written off for someone like me.
Cool.
I really wasn't sure whether or not he had seen the Jurassic Park movies, so I came into this thinking, oh no, Pat hasn't seen my movies again.
No, I like Jurassic Park. I swear.
It's not the sequels.
I'd go watch it again this afternoon. It's too damn hot out.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to say follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. You can see our video episodes on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, a bunch of different places. So OTR Debate on all these different platforms.
Yeah, and I guess that has been a friendly debate. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
It's been kind of friendly.
Yeah. A contentious but friendly debate.